wrapping up, and we had what really is the biggest game of the season at the weekend between Leinster and Saracens, and it was roundly and firmly won by the Englishmen. And,
True. We needed an extra little bit. We probably missed the news cycle with reviewing it this week, but we probably needed a little extra bit of time to calm down and do our post-mortem from our Leinster perspective. But no complaints. Better team won.
There was no hint, obviously, at the game, and there was no hint from any Leinster fan of Saracens or anything like that. It was all fair play Saracens. You were the better team. You deserved to win it.
Yeah.
And thoroughly they did.
Sure, this is it. We've been in that position before. We've been the better team and taking those wins when they come. But in this instance, there was no denying it. There were chances. There were moments where it could have gone Leinster's way, but it was on balance of play. The more physical, the result was a fair one. Is right. Yeah. I kind of thought, certainly in the first half exchanges, as Leinster were kind of cultivating that 10-point lead, they were doing well to stymie some of Saracens' attack and kind of putting them under enough pressure to have them make a few mistakes. Although, as you were saying, the Saracens' attack was probing and nearly finding weakness all throughout that. But it was like the coughing up of those 10 points very quickly. Kind of did erode away what was felt like a lead built on kind of cleverness and good tactics rather than genuine superiority in any kind of area. It was more like, I thought Leinster proved themselves probably a slightly more cunning team, certainly very detailed focused, but Sarries, like systems as well as their physicality, and like you could tell by some of the selections even beforehand, moving Itoji to 6 so they can accommodate Skelton in the rows. Yeah, they wanted to be physical big and strong on the gain line, and they were 100%. It was very high level, as we predicted that it would be. Everything that was going on was very high. Even Lamas Tele scrummaging against Healy, that Healy definitely did get on the better end of. I remember watching that from the R stand, and it was very clever, high level stuff going on all over the pitch. Yeah, and obviously high levels of physicality. Technique. I thought it was right up there with the highest standard of club game that you'll ever see. That I've seen maybe since Bordeaux when in Bordeaux when Clermont played Leinster back in 2012 in the semi-final. That was another game that was titanic and another example of great defences. But yeah, it was both a bitter and positive pill in the sense that it was the final that we'd all been waiting for. It was the two best teams in Europe for the last number of years. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then the game was very high level. Both sides came firing and ready to go, and both sides put in a shift. And then the bitter pill was that Saracens were that bit better. Yeah, and 100% they were. Yeah, I think on the balance of the year, it's what we were saying in our preview as well. On the balance of the year's exploits, Sarries have been the more. There's just a slightly stronger team, and Leinster haven't hit their high-flying straps that they were finding last year. Well, what I noticed at halftime, it was 10-all obviously at halftime, and as you say, that the moment, the 2 minutes where they got 10 points before halftime were obviously massive moments, and we will touch on them again. But what I had, the feeling that I had at halftime was generally when Leinster had the ball, Saracens were shutting them down, were physically beating them. Obviously Gary Ringrose was having a really horrible time, and they were getting on top of them and they were beating them up, and Leinster's attack wasn't getting off what it can. And when Saracens had the ball, there was a lot more to it. Like Leinster were just about stymieing them, but there was always danger around every corner. I thought Ben Spencer was playing brilliantly. He was picking the right passes. They did a really good job of isolating Sexton, who stood up to the challenge, but they were just again, typical Saracens, they were just cleverly, a little bit of deception and flooding that channel with 3 players, and the 2 guys either side of Sexton were taking the 2 runners coming into it, and the guy who Sexton was marking was receiving the pass and running down Sexton's channel, and he was making the tackles. I think he made 14 or 15 in the whole game, because they found him a lot with ball in hand. They were trying to have him be on his arse as often as they could make it happen. Exactly, and there was just all that clever stuff. They obviously had good coming into the line as well as Farrell, and they were just picking smooth, clever passes and getting the better, not quite getting the better, but as you say, probing, and ultimately that pressure in the second half told. But at half time, when it was 10-all, I had the very distinct feeling that no, this is not going to go our way. We're not as good as them. We're not as sharp. We're not as polished, and our attack can't do as much. Yeah, and that told. They got that. They got the try in the second half. Well, sure, you can see a microcosm of that from Leinster's point of view in just how quiet, even in quite a good first half performance, James Lowe was very quiet. uncharacteristically so, and then he grew into the game a bit in the second half, purely by coming off his wing. He was carrying off 9 a lot of the time, which is like fair play to him for getting involved, because he was seeing he wasn't getting involved, but that's like symptomatic of us not finding the wide channels with anywhere near enough frequency and not putting people into space. 100%. And at one point Gary Ringrose, in amongst many's a poor play from him this game, he did like fail to execute it. I think it was a 3-on-1 nearly at that
was
point.
incredible. In the moment at the start of the second half when he did a CJ and Stander impression and just charged at contact when he had a huge overlap off his outside, but he'd been rattled and rocked. One of the things that he likes to do off breaking ball is gather one and loop back around, back towards the ruck, and he can find soft shoulders and guys dissipating in there, but Saracens had done their homework on him, and as soon as he scrambled that breaking ball, he was chopped down, and
usually by a Toji coming running forward,
and those kinds of contacts that he's not used to getting rattled him and really made him look very average. And it was just another nice little winning formula for Saracens. When you look at it from Leinster's perspective, which we will do now before we obviously take a look at the champs and congratulate them obviously on just how well they performed, but I think there's two ways you can look at it from Leinster's perspective. There's the way that, you know, we can talk about a lot of moments in the games. The first way really is the way that the coaches and the players will have to look at it, in terms of even for the rest of this season. It's what little things do we get wrong, what little mistakes do we make, how could the game have gone better. And I guess a perfect example of that is, you know, you execute that play from Ringrose at the start of the second half, you throw that pass, the try's there to be scored, go
take
and
that
score
7-pointer back, and then go in with second half, but they tried that and didn't. And then obviously the moment just before half time when Leinster had the pill and the decision, it was 10-3 to Leinster, and Leinster felt they could have used another score before half time, so they decided not to kick it out but to go for a box kick. And you know, a lot of stick is being given to Luke McGrath for that, which I would defend him on, in the sense that, like, first of all, it's a team decision, it wasn't his decision, and second of all, the box kick isn't nearly as big an error as the giving away of the penalty, which was Rob Carney's error on the other end, because he was late arriving and then didn't move.
That's what gives Saracens the chance, and Saracens then, as championship sides do, and it was I feel like Leinster almost knew it, because they understood the importance of that moment and couldn't execute, and gave the opportunity to the other championship side to have a moment in that crucial moment, and they couldn't stop them. And that was crucial as well. That try before half time was massive. I mean, it looked like the pressure was going to tell. Leinster obviously doing really well to defend it out in the tight, but it is worth noting, just in a little, like, these are mistakes you don't need to make. Jordan Larmour shooting up on Farrell. Obviously Spencer threw that delicious skip pass past Good to Farrell, but the guy who was marking Farrell, who was trying to cover that space, is Robbie Henshaw. So Larmour doesn't need to shoot there. And Robbie Henshaw's going to stop Farrell from getting to the line. Larmour needs to stick on Maitland, and he didn't. And that was Farrell's delicious touch that took the two of them out of the game.
Was it Farrell who threw it, or I thought it was Spencer straight from 9?
Yeah, threw it to Farrell, who got it to threw it to Maitland. So the setup was Spencer at the breakdown, Good at 10, Farrell at 12, and the winger. That was it. It was just 3-on-3, and because Good looked like he was going to receive the ball, Leinster were a little narrow. Spencer flashed it past Good straight to Farrell, and Henshaw was trying to cover that space and get in and on Farrell from the inside. And Larmour was the last man on the outside, and what Larmour decided to do was fly up at Farrell, and Farrell just catch pass, and Maitland had an easy run in.
As easy tries, he'll score.
But it was a delightful score from Saracens' perspective, and it was built on that power game, because they had a line out around the 22 and they got inches from the line before that moment, with just power game and clever offloads in the tight and just not being stymied. Certainly that was another winning moment for them.
As was Billy Vunipola's slam dunk of a try. Just again, it was a couldn't argue with the power kind of thing, just picking off the base. It was actually, that was a curious one, because they had initially got the shove on when we tried a 7-man scrum because obviously Fardy was off the pitch with the yellow card at that time, and so we had a 7-man shove, but they had Conan on one flanker position and got absolutely minced in that scrum, and then they decided to reset from the penalty, And then the next scrum we put Conan back in his 8 position and just left it vacant.
Right.
But then he wasn't there to make the tackle properly on Billy Vunipola. He ran in, or he made the hit tackle, but it was a soft contact.
I feel like the game was already being lost.
It was.
But I definitely think there was another big moment would have been a big like fixable on the day moment would have been the Sean O'Brien missed tackle on Jackson Ray, which was telling. I mean, from our perspective, like that was when Saracens didn't take the foot off the neck from that point. They got that big Jackson Ray break, which was just a straight up missed tackle from Shawnee, and that was it. And that was all she wrote. They put the pressure on, and eventually I think it led to that Billy Vunipola try many phases later. But then the final one that was fixable on the day would be the decision to put Jack McGrath on the bench over Ed Byrne, who was the incumbent, and there were lots of reasons to do that. He's a big bloke. You know, he can make tackles, he can make plays in the loose, jackal plays, carrying plays, he can offload the ball. He's good hands on him. I understand why they did it, but it proved to be a massive mistake because it was just the final nail in the coffin, in the sense that when Cian Healy came off, the scrum went to complete disaster. I mean, the man can't scrummage. He's not a good scrummager. And he was all over the place again at the scrum for Leinster.
Against their subs had been on since the 30th minute as well.
Yeah,
so you
so
thought
he came
that
on
maybe
fresh.
he's going on fresh against fatigue lads, but no,
technique. He's just never had it. He's never had it. He started out as a loose head, switched to tight head, switched back to loose head, and he's just never been able to scrummage that effectively. And
it's crazy because he's probably one of the best props in the loose.
He's up there, yeah. That's what got him his Lions jersey, all those loose plays. But at the scrum, he's always been a problem, and it's deteriorated even still from where it was.
Yeah.
So that was an optimistic selection, but it was the final nail in Leinster's coffin in terms of what they got wrong.
Yeah, I thought our bench was far less impactful anyway across the park. It was. Things like Bend came on and there was no help either, and at scrum time it was already going backwards. Well,
that's the thing, is that secondly, the second sort of macro point, you can examine all these little things in the day and say if this had gone right and not this, and this had gone right and not this from Leinster's perspective, maybe we could have won the game. But you know, it's an interest. It's definitely worth noting, and it's definitely the way that the team need to be looking at it, is trying to achieve that perfection. But you know, Saracens had little moments that didn't go their way as well, that they could say, oh, if this had happened and that had happened. And in fact, towards the tail end of the game, I felt that they could have got more tries. They could have really, when they were 20 points to 10 up and we were lost, and they really could have put the squeeze on. But they didn't quite manage to pull off those plays. Leinster scrambled. He was pretty good. But the macro picture is like, why were Saracens, and why have Saracens been just that little bit better than where Leinster are at? And there's probably a few reasons for it. I mean, you look personnel wise, you look at the end of last season. I mean, Issa Nasiwa, Jordy Murphy and Joey Carberry leaving the province, and not one of them even sort of replaced.
Yeah, it's probably fair to say. Certainly the Joey Carberry off the bench at Avenue that was coming last season was like, that's such a distributing option.
But he also had Larmer. Issa would start. It would be the same starting team that played at the weekend, but Larmer and Carberry could come on. And
that's a bit more of a game changer. Whereas from the jerseys 20 to, or was it 21
to 23, no back cover was used.
Because you felt we couldn't, because they felt they're not at the same level at all.
Can't trust Hugh O'Sullivan, can't take Sexton off, can't trust.
That was a real problem, because Luke McGrath, a lot was being made, and Luke McGrath had a wonderful defensive final in a few ways. Stopped Jamie George on the line in an amazing tackle. Stripped Alex Good off a midfield scrum attacking first phase. Brilliant defensive plays, but he's too slow. There were a few instances where, like, at one point he picked it up, pump faked it, and then threw it, and it just meant man was getting man and ball.
Couple of intercepts to Billy V in the second half that were also kind of killer moments as well. Certainly that second one where Luke seemed to look up and see him and throw it anyway was a bit baffling.
That was baffling. That was very much a losing picture. But the fact that he was obviously struggling, and our attack was struggling to get anything out going, largely because it stems from the base. He's just not quick enough, and the option of Gibson Park being there and not being available, because we kind of did have to pick Fardy and Lowe really on form as well. Even though it ended up being that Lowe couldn't get played into the game appropriately because we were too slow off 9. This
Yeah.
is it's been a horrible quandary for Leinster
Yes,
for
yeah,
all years. Just like you're always sacrificing something for leaving any of those players out.
100%.
Ideally,
yeah.
you'd have all 3 of them available for selection, so that if Luke McGrath's not going that well, you can shake it, and you definitely does shake things up to bring on.
I think
a guy
Gibson
like
Park is
Gibson
a
Park.
starter. To be honest,
Yeah.
I think he's
quicker than
the best
and
scrummy.
it means our attack functions a bit better.
Yeah.
And that was an issue all day. You highlighted it at the very beginning. I think a lot of it stemmed from the Luke McGrath thing, but also the fact that Gary Ringrose was having his worst game in a blue jersey that I can recall, which was obviously born of some pressure, but and they did a lot of homework on him to shut him down. But
the
he's
fact
normally
that
better at rising to that.
he is, but the fact that that's doable is a massive concern, and it's for Leinster and it's for Ireland, because outside of Gary Ringrose, there isn't a distributing player who can help Johnny Sexton, who can throw the passes, who can put people into space, who can make those kinds of plays. There isn't a second 10 on the team. Like the work Alex Good does for Saracens is tremendous.
There were good comparisons between Johnny Sexton and Owen Farrell that I was reading, where it was interesting, just going like it's hard to compare them based on this, because like Sexton had a great game for that first half where he was quarterbacking and all this, but Farrell, like, because they were winning so many contacts, seemed to have more of an armchair ride, because he was like alternating with Alex Good, and it was just a very different way of playing the game
and freed him up exactly. And then in those big moments he had that soft, tough touch, but it wasn't about him
exactly.
And I don't think that the quarterbacking 10, certainly for this Leinster team, and if I'm honest, for Ireland as well, is the full answer and the full picture. And I think you can have all those attributes and use all those attributes that Sexton has, but also have another dynamic. And at the moment, that's like the first, second and third answer to that question seems to be Gary Ringrose. But it does create a quandary, and we'll get into that more so when we're previewing Ireland's World Cup and what they should and shouldn't be doing, and how
the
to
current
solve
state
that
of
problem.
affairs is that if we're saying that Rob Kearney's the incumbent 15, that makes Gary Ringrose undroppable at 13, because he's the only, like you're saying,
where the reality is that Chris Farrell's the form 13, but you can't pick a team with Chris Farrell and Rob Kearney and Robbie Henshaw and just no distributors. You just can't do it. You can't. You won't score tries. The opposition defence all of a sudden just has to shut down Sexton, and that's the whole game.
It's a good question, but that's a little aside.
It is an aside, but it goes to that macro picture of where Leinster are missing spaces. And last year, they had Anissa Nasiwa to throw in. They had Jordan Larmour to come off the bench instead of to start, and Joey Carberry obviously to come off the bench as well. And then they also had Jordy Murphy at 7 instead of Sean O'Brien, which would be a massive difference. I mean, he's definitely ahead of where Shawnee is at the moment.
Certainly,
So for those 3 losses, Leinster were and are a worse team than they were in last year's class. And that's telling. Like, I mean, their seconds weren't doing as well. Their Christmas of their attack isn't as sharp as it had been in years gone by.
Christmas of their passing game seems to be have fallen off a little bit, and in recent years could probably do with getting another skills camp going on, skills coaching. Just
the Graham Henry factor that they got after the semi-final defeat against. No, it was actually before the semi-final defeat of Claremont, after Leo's first year in charge, before Lancaster came in, when things were actually not going so well. It was still a Matt O'Connor hangover, and the decision to get Graham Henry in for a few weeks and then do a big skills seminar.
That's kind of where Carberry came into prominence, was when Henry saw him play and say, like, that's your playmaker for the next 10 years. And it would have been.
He was loving it, and and Leinster did a big skills camp. The emphasis was skills, and then they played that tournament when they lost in both semi-finals, and they just came up short, lacking a little bit of what the Irish team had just in terms of nous and physicality. But now they've probably gone the other direction, where they got very used to beating teams with physicality. It was their get out of jail free card against Toulouse. They can hold the ball, they can break them down. They obviously put together some silky rugby in that semi-final as well, but was
only
all
after
based
the bludgeoning effect.
It was all based on the bludgeoning, and then you run into a team who you just can't bludgeon, and all of a sudden that skills that used to be able to get you around those teams just aren't there. So Leinster certainly need to worry.
Certainly compared to the Christmas they played with against Sarries last year in the Aviva, it wasn't on show. Like that first try that Lowe scored, where it was wide passes, very accurate, bringing them both runners onto the ball so that Lowe can break the tackle. We didn't see any of that. Lowe didn't barely touch the ball in the first half. Instead, even though we were doing some cunning things, like I thought one of the first plays that happened was very telling of possibly some of the difference between the two sides in prep. Was Leinster took a line out and Dev like pump faked off the top, and every single Saracens player was caught offside, including in the midfield, just by that dummy. He was waiting for them to rush up, and then we got that penalty, and then also created a bit more time and space for ourselves at the line out in doing that, which is like little good cunning bits of homework that I thought were paying good dividends in that first half. But it was only when the lead was just evaporated away that it's like, oh, all of that homework that had worked, but now it's back to square one. Yeah. But you've played all your cards.
Well, Saracens, their defence is super physical, it's super narrow, it's super quick. They're very fit because they just keep maintaining that line speed for the whole game. And obviously with Luke McGrath's slow passing, it's a bit of a killer. But Glasgow were defeated by them, but showed in the couple of games that they played in the
where the
Park
space is against
that there is space. You can get out, you can flash and go wide, and certainly Leinster need that in their repertoire. There are massive positives for Leinster though as well. They're still one of the top teams in Europe. I thought Cian Healy was again outstanding.
He's a titan.
He blows my mind every week. I watch him every week, and every week he blows my mind. His scrummaging was magnificent again, and got the better of that great Saracen scrum in spite of like an incredible weight discrepancy.
Because they picked Skelton and Itoji were both there with Cruz.
Itoji in the back row, and then Jackson Ray and Billy Vunipola that's your back row. I mean, that's just an incredibly sized pack. And then not only did he get up the better of his man, but he started to shift the scrum. And I just a phenomenal scrummager. And that was definitely a massive positive.
James Ryan's performance, good.
James Ryan is as physical as any of those Sarries boys. Stopped them. I thought Robbie Henshaw was really great. So there are massive positives, and there.
I thought Sexton played pretty well, all things considered. It's very hard being a 10 when the collision zone's being lost, and then by the second half that was the case.
Well, the key now for Leinster going into just the back end of the season in the Pro 14 is that, having been, you can't imagine that they're tired. I know it's a 1 week rest off versus a 2 week one, but it feels more like they're battle hardened. Like watching Sexton at the end of that one, like he hasn't played too much rugby, but now he had like a really
intense
physical game, and now they can go. They didn't look injured. They looked ready. And I think that speaks well.
And they'll have amends to make. This is like what we said pre-podcast or pre-final last week in the podcast was the loser of that final, I would make definite favourites to go and win their league, and I think I stand by that. I think Leinster now have become, whereas probably before the final I was saying Glasgow are probably slight favourites to win the league, I'm probably thinking now.
Well, I think it'll be a banging game, but we have the two semis obviously first, which will tell. True. But finally on Leinster, just if they want to make it back to Europe next year, obviously they are going to be able to select all three of those three players. But my instinct says via academy recruitment or some other way they need to incorporate another distributing outside back into the team, and have that option to have two distributors on the field at once. Whether that becomes Frawley coming into the mix at fullback,
he's done well from there before. It's a good year for Frawley actually. That's been one of the main positives to come from Joey's exodus to Munster. Munster is the finding of Kieran Frawley, who's got a lot of good minutes under his belt. Some have gone well, some have gone badly. So next year he'll be bigger, stronger. Excited for a few other prospects, the like Scott Penny. Will be a year older. He's an out 7 who he could have used, but he's a bit too small. He's an under 20s.
With the injury of the two out 7s, Leinster did lose that player.
That's true. And I thought we did lack for that, because it was just in terms of being able to stop what is an onslaught of Sarries pressure when they get motoring, like having a 7 there to turn a ball over at a crucial time is vital, and we normally have that.
Although Healy did get one big jackal.
He did have one. Healy's he was just playing really well. He was up for it. Big game. From
the Saracens' perspective, I mean, this is going to be a game that was very encouraging for them.
Oh yeah. This is their first victory over Leinster in their history, which is crazy to think. But there you go. So
is that right? I thought it was like 4-1 coming into this week. I could have sworn, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Oh, it was 3-0.
But they would certainly be very pleased, having lost last year, to come into this and a second stamp on a second feather in the cap of the English against the Irish this year.
True.
In a massive way, just winning that contact zone. I thought, I think they're going to be very encouraged. In the first half, they were patient, as we said. They were probing, and they were
one or two
finding
mistakes,
those
but they
moments.
didn't let them get to their heads. Like at one point, it was actually Brad Barrett's only mistake of the game was rushing in to try and clear Scott Fardy out when he was making a nuisance of himself, and used his shoulder to hit Fardy out. Penalty the other way, big pressure valve released, but he just put his hand up, and there was a sense of calm, and we'll go again about
it. That's the whole thing, is that they're very cool. They They don't let the big moment. They don't try and make it about the big moments as much. Saracens. They're always probing. They're always looking to score tries. They're not really plotting when it's going to happen. They're just figuring out how it's going to happen, and they're very relaxed. They don't sweat if a moment goes against them. They go again. But they're a learning, composed machine with an attack that is silky smooth and constantly working.
As well as being huge.
And very, very physical, and they know that they're going to eventually break you down, and they're very cool, they're very collected, they're led by Farrell and obviously Mark McCall, and they're just very, very well drilled, and they were composed, and then in the second half ruthless in their dismantling of what had been the best team in Europe and one of the most intimidating teams in Europe. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were not intimidated,
but I don't think either team were intimidated coming in. I thought both teams had their plays and had their homework done.
The manner in which, like, obviously we were looking at Leinster, and we've established obviously last year that Leinster aren't perhaps the same team that they were last year, but to watch them dismantle us in that second half, just putting together sort of play after play after play, and just being so cool and composed, and not being bothered, like, we're just beating Leinster, here we go, winning contact, winning penalty, plugging in the corner, we're going, and Leinster having no answer. And then when Leinster got the ball, obviously just maintaining that super physical line speed, we're breaking them down, we're battering them.
Captain Fantastic making 28 tackles, missing none.
Billy Vunipola, the man of the moment, obviously scoring that try through a trolley full of players, and getting those two intercepts,
huge plays,
and it was like a foot on the face or a hand on the face. We're superior, and that whole second half was just an exercise in superiority, and they were probably 20 points better than Leinster in that half of rugby. And
it's only scramble defence that kept it that close.
So it was extraordinarily impressive. It was.
Well, they've been building for quite some time, and I was even just reading through their squad and the depth that they have, like the fact that the likes of Marcelo Bosch is not playing anywhere near that. He played in that Dublin game last year, by the way, but he's nowhere near that team anymore. So they were missing a few.
And who's come in to replace him is two young physical English lads in Lazowski and Tompkins.
And both playing really, really well.
So their depth is incredible. They have this English base, they have this academy that's producing players, and they're very cool.
The only thing they're missing is an elite fan base
and a seven,
an
elite
elite seven fan base. But they're less. They suffer less for the lack of a seven purely because players like Billy Vunipola, Maro Itoje, Jamie George occasionally do get stuck in that area anyway, and they harry Jackson Ray does sometimes as well. Rhodes when he's on the pitch. It's I still think you're probably right. An out and out seven could improve things for them. But their defence is obviously very an English mindset of trying to smash boys behind the game.
In my opinion, they could use an open side for sure. I mean, like, it's the same. Like this time last year, the instinct was to say nothing negative about Leinster. That it's all uphill from here. But if they do want to retain, they have to be just a little careful, because first of all, their super physical will shut you down defence. They time it very well and they maintain their discipline within it, but it's creeping by the letter of the law offside most, if not all, times. But this year, that's not officiated by anyone for anyone against any team, so it's just good doing your homework of what the officials are calling and what they're not calling. But if it proves to continue to be as successful as it has been, it could be the case that ahead of the World Cup that
the refs they get an adjusted message.
You get an adjusted message. Things get more strict, and then all of a sudden your defensive, what you have been doing, isn't going to work as well. If you stick with it, you may end up conceding more and more penalties, and if you don't, you're just not quite winning the advantage line as much as you had been, and that's where getting jacklers in can become an avenue of success. And I think that they should probably look to just expand in that area, get themselves a seven, and then obviously their academy is going to do the rest of the work. I mean, they're still the best team in Europe right now, and should be very excited about it. They have a wonderful balance to their backline as it is right now. I mean, Lazowski is becoming more and more centre and less 10 good as the second 10, and they're everyone can catch pass obviously, but they know exactly who everyone knows exactly what their role is. They have a million different colourful shapes, mostly the screen formation, but not always. They do have those 3 players flood to one channel, little moves as well. They vary it up very well. I believe it's Farrell making the calls, but everything is to a T. And in terms of shutting it down over 80 minutes, when you marry the structure and the shape of what they're doing and the intelligence of it with the raw physicality of the boys on the pitch, and just the technique. They're not dropping the ball. They're throwing perfect passes,
getting offloads away.
It's a hard thing to imagine.
No, they'll definitely be up there as favourites or close to next year anyway. Regardless, and they'll probably go on and win their league now in all likelihood as well and do a double.
What I will say is that Munster shut them down for 40
got
minutes.
up, big aggressive line speed, get them behind the gain line, and as you pointed out, some of those big forwards are less inclined to retreat as to come forward. They're all about pushing forward out of line and hitting things, whereas when they're caught behind the gain line, can be a little slow around that corner to resource that run.
100%. They're all such big men, so that does tell they like to have go forward ball. Like most forwards, they like to have go forward ball. So when you do catch them behind the gain line, as I think Chris Farrell had an excellent game against
Scannell
them
a few times as well. Got them there,
and that was a little telling moment. The Munster suffered for their lack of discipline.
Collectively,
in that area they got the better of Saracens, but as a team, their leagues behind them, so they weren't able to make it tell. But there were definitely indications in that game of
avenues to spoil the Sarries.
And likewise with Glasgow.
If
you can put together what Munster's defence were doing and what Glasgow's attack did for parts of those two games, and then marry that with discipline. That's where teams like the top teams, like your Clermonts, your Toulouses, and your Leinsters, are going to be looking at to try and get the better of Saracens, and it'll be some degree of concern for them. I'm very curious to see what will happen if they end up playing Gloucester in the Premiership semi-final. Obviously they'll be home for that one, but I'd be curious to see if Gloucester get anything off against them. Obviously that's not for a couple of weeks, but for the time being, definitely best team in Europe. And I think it's worth noting, I thought it was funny in the matches they were doing it, like you've got Alex Good getting European Player of the Year. You've got Brad Barrett recording I don't know how many tackles.
Man of the match performance. I think it was 28 and not one missed.
Club captain, lifting the trophy, talismanic. And you've got Mark McCall, who is the coach of the decade for them, and is just, as a coach, like, it's one thing what Lancaster and Leo are doing, but he's almost Joe Schmitting it, but playing entertaining rugby. And you just wonder, are these guys for my money seem to be giants of the European game, and they're being ignored in the test arena. And one thinks that post World Cup, that's going to change for Mark McCall at some point in the next 4 year cycle. Someone is going to snag him up.
Should have been Ireland.
Should have been Ireland. 100% should have been Ireland. He's infinitely more valuable than Andy Farrell, and he also has loads of contacts of big English defensive coaches if you need one. So Mark McCall, you'd have to think enters the test arena. Alex Good, you'd have to think gets into that squad. And then the question mark is Brad Barrett, and I met an English guy at the game and I was asking him about that, and he was obviously a Saracens fan, and I was just saying, like, why, like, it almost didn't occur to him when I said it, like, why is Brad Barrett not in the test squad? And he was like, oh yeah, I don't know, we have our centres, but Ben Teo's in the squad. And he goes, yeah.
Like, what's that about?
So I'm thinking, for this World Cup, if he can keep his body together, my instinct says that they're not going to bring him.
No, they haven't been using him.
But
it is a fun fact. It's like who were the centres the last time they beat the All Blacks, and the answer is Brad Barrett and Manu.
They're going to stick with Slade, but even as a squad man, I would rate him in the dressing room.
And it was Good at 15 that day.
And Good at 15. Well, Good, I think after that European Player of the Year performance, it would be extraordinary not to see him included in the squad. It would be very, very extraordinary.
Is Mike Brown going to the World Cup?
Mike Brown has already fallen out with Eddie Jones. I think he's done. But at the moment, the incumbent is Elliot Daly, who is a worse footballer by some margin than Alex Good is. So I would 100% back that. I'd like to see
Barrett's defence is what I think just the glue that holds all of that together in the context of Sarries, allowing the likes of Good and Farrell to look so comfortable and have so much time on the ball. A lot of that is coming from just the work that guy does, the big physical work that he does. Same for Lazowski. Like, Lazowski's loving his change into 13 because he's outside a classy operator like Barrett all the time.
Certainly there would be more, Leinster would be a lot more confident attacking a Sarries defence that was maybe Barrett, Lazowski, Tompkins. They might think there's a little
Farrell, Lazowski, Tompkins.
Did I say Barrett? Excuse me, sorry. Bowden Barrett. No, Farrell, Lazowski, and Tompkins, they would feel maybe there's a softness there that we can get at.
Or certainly Ringrose wouldn't be as rattled as he was, perhaps.
Probably not.
So, but it on the day that it was, I can't argue with any of the results. I thought both teams
and the season, the day and the season.
Yeah, and I thought it was a final that was played to a higher standard of any of the other games in the tournament calendar altogether as well.
Agreed.
You were looking at the final going like, oh yeah, this is why these two teams are here. This is really high quality stuff. And then it was also obvious in that high quality context who was just the better of them, and then that team ended up winning. So fair, and fair.
It fits narrative wise for the season, and Leinster will be there. They'll still be there.
They're going nowhere. They have, as their slogan says, from the ground up, and their grassroots and clubs and kind of academy system is such that they will plug those holes. So.
Thanks for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please like down below and subscribe for more videos. And please enter the comments section to join our conversation.